Okay, great. Well, let's go ahead and get started with our presentation for this afternoon. First of all, thank you all for joining us on this beautiful afternoon. I'm looking outside and jealous if you're able to get out there and enjoy some of the nice weather. My name is Falika Ahastin Bryant. I'm the director of the Native American Educational and Cultural Center here on campus, and we're actually presenting from the center today. And we're very pleased to have our guest, Larkin Fourkiller, who will be joining us here shortly. And I think everybody should be muted just to make sure that we have our full attention on our speaker. That way, if there's any questions, we can pop those in there. Today's presentation is a partnership with the Center for the Environment, and I'd like to thank Dr. Laura Zanotti for helping us with this presentation today. We also have two other events that will be taking place later on this month as part of our NAECC summer virtual event series. We are launching a book club, summer book club. Our book discussion will be centered on Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. And if you'd like, we plan to have a discussion at the end of the month on June 30th from 2 to 3 o'clock. And we have the amazing Therese Mayat who will be able to join us and lead a discussion. And then next week, we are partnering with the Center for the Career Opportunities to host a session called Avoid the Summer 2020 Slump, Obtain the professional edge employers still seek. So again, this is something that we'll be hosting online, and you're welcome to join us again. So as we get ready to get started here, we're very pleased to have Larkin Fourkiller here. He is going to be presenting our session today is called Exploring Indiana Wildlife Through Photography. So I'm going to turn it over to Larkin here in just a bit.
Hello, everybody. My name is Larkin Fourkiller, and I've been very privileged enough to put on this session for everybody here. And we're going to talk about Indiana wildlife, and more importantly, I would say we're going to talk about life in general, and then how it just spreads to everything else, being whether it's indigenous or life or nature or whatever it may be. I kind of was thinking about how do I want to start this PowerPoint in this presentation. And so I'm going to start with a story, and it came to me about, I don't know, 3 or 4 days ago. And me and a family member and my little nephew, he's about 6 years old. We was out at the golf course, and we started walking toward the green. And for anybody that plays golf, the green is where the putters or the golfers are going to putt. And so anyways, we're walking, and one of my family members, he's an elder. He was walking in front of me and my nephew, and he kind of looked down and he pointed down and he said, ants. And he walked on past. And so I was probably going to walk on past too, because I've seen ants a lot. And, you know, when you say the word ant, you don't think much of it. And I don't know if you're going to sit there and look down at the ants or the ant holes down there. But I had my little nephew by me, and I wanted to see them myself, because no matter how many times I've seen nature, whether it's eagles or ants or bison, it's always intriguing to me if I have the time. And granted, it was a sunny day, which that's always great for nature, just to be out there. And so anyways, it's not typical that people are really in nature. Now, they might be outside in nature, but to be aware of nature and to be with nature, that's a different story. And so I wanted to see them myself, and it was a good time for my little nephew to see that too. And as we looked down, there was ants. And there was a little, there were like ant hills basically, but I only seen one hill at first. And so he's a little guy, he's about 6 years old. And so it was cool because, you know, I crouched down, and so he did too. And we're actually spending time together, and we're looking down at this, these ant hills. And basically I was telling him a little bit about the ants. And so now we're with nature, and we're actually visiting with nature. And so as I started to look, because once you see nature, you start paying attention to the surrounding. And so when I was looking down, I seen a bunch of other ant hills there, which was really cool. And it looked like, you know, if you go back in the indigenous times, it looked like a tribe there, you know, like teepees and things like that. It was really unique. And I was telling my nephew, I was telling them to look at these ants, not just look at them, but actually watch them. And I told him that they're really unique, because I had seen them before and spent time with them. I had told him that there's going to be a lot of them, which there was. And then I told him that they're really good workers, like they are constantly working. And so at that time, I even told him too, I said, if you look real close at these ants, Now you have to get really close and really close. And I told him, if you watch, a lot of times they'll have food in their mouth and you'll be able to see that. You have to really look at it though. And so as I was looking and he was looking too, I happened to see, oh, okay, cool. They're carrying something. And 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them were carrying something. And so it was really cool to have him see that as well. Not just the ant, but the ant's actually working and carrying something. And so it wasn't food, but it was sand. There was a nearby sand trap, which on a golf course, there's sand traps there. So they must have got the sand there, and then they just get all these pieces of sand, and then they build that, they build their mountain. And they may go in there, and I don't know what they do actually, but you know, there's time to understand that. But so it was cool for him to see that. And I told him that they carry food, and in this case, they carry gravel. And basically what they're doing is they're working together, and they're working on a purpose, and they're busy. And I wanted him to see that, because I wanted him to see that they work and they're just like us. And it was really important for me to show him that. And so, and then just a little thing about that is there was a part that wasn't shaded, and I was just trying to tell him about nature and the temperature. And in the shaded part, those ant mountains, they would have been cooler. And I tried to explain to him that, because nature will change your temperature. So, but in the parts that weren't shaded, there were maybe been 5 or 6 ant mountains. They were hot basically. And I tried to tell him like heating and cooling, and you use nature, and the ants were probably using nature as well. And so that's a cool story, because I don't know if my nephew had ever really looked down at ants and really watched them, because, you know, if you don't pay attention to that, or you don't think about that, you may just step all over the ants, and they are just like us. They live, they're living creations. And so I was happy to show him that. And then later on, my elder family member and then my nephew, we also seen 2 owls.
Want me to get the PowerPoint started?
In just a second. We also seen 2 owls, and they had never seen an owl before live in the wild, which was really cool. And then my nephew, he had seen the owls too, and there were 2 of them. And you know, the owls will kind of move their head like this, and he got to see that, and he got to see how they talk too. So basically, I just wanted to kind of reiterate the point, is that was his first time. It wasn't his first time outside, obviously, but it was cool to show him his first owls. He'd never seen that before. And I didn't get into nature and wildlife till I was about 33, to where I got into it real seriously, where it was part of my spirit. And so I had seen owls when I was like 25 or 26, but for him to see them at 6 years old was cool. And the elder, he's seen them too for the first time. So I just wanted to share that. And we seen a duck. I'm sure he's seen a duck before. And then he kept calling these little creeks. He likes the creek. And he kept calling it a river. And it was just kind of cool to kind of educate him a little bit. So he looks at nature different. He understands it. But I told him that those are creeks that he likes, because they're small bodies of water. And a river is a really large body of water. And I told him things that you would see there. So I'm going to start my PowerPoint, but I just wanted to start with that story. I had a vision 3 or 4 days ago, and that's how I want to start it. Now, everyone, I don't know if you can see me, but basically I'm going to show you just a couple slides of an owl and then the ants that we've seen. These are not the actual ones, but just so you can kind of see. Okay, this is just the introduction. Like I said, I had a vision on how I wanted this presentation to go, and I wanted to start off with the story first. But the title of today's is Exploring Indiana Wildlife Through Photography. And it's very important that, along with everybody that's watching, you guys are a major part of what we're doing right now and today. And I'm Larkin Fourkiller, and the Native American Educational Cultural Center, and a Center for the Environment. And the reason why I say those 3 things is it's important that we're all working together today. I'm an Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians tribal member. through one side of my family, and the other side of my family is the Cherokee Nation. Go back to the Eastern bands. Basically, they are in the Qualla boundary, or they're in Cherokee, North Carolina, or places like Snowbird, things like that. And so my other half of the family is from the Cherokee Nation in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And that's where the largest of the Cherokee are at. Basically, when the removal happened, we went from the North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee area, and we're marched over to Tahlequah, Oklahoma, or Stillwell, Adair County, places like that. And that's where most of your Cherokee are at presently. I'm a professional nature and wildlife photographer. I'm a professional keynote speaker, and I'm a professional writer. And I kind of focus on nature and wildlife or Native American or Indigenous or Cherokee, and art and things like that, photography. Here's are you sure they can hear me? Okay. And this is in Cherokee, North Carolina. So it kind of gives you a story of the Cherokee, where we originated from and where I originate from. And this is the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians. And this is a sign right outside of Cherokee, North Carolina. And so when you go over to the Western side, or the Cherokee Nation, this is what you'll see over there with Tahlequah, Oklahoma. As I kind of mentioned earlier, I forgot to put you guys on here, but you guys should be the fourth one here to the viewers. But through us four, we're able to work together to help people see nature, to know about nature, and to get out and know how to explore it. And when you know nature, it's basically once you appreciate it and you know it, then that's preservation at that time, because now you have a relationship with it. And that's very important. And, the title of this presentation I'm doing, it says a lot about the Indigenous perspective. And so when you talk about the Indigenous or Native Americans, the one thing is that nature is our spirit. So anytime I've ever studied the Native American culture, been in it, the Indigenous culture, is everything is revolved around the nature. And even in our physicality, the things that we wear, our war weapons when it's time, our dwellings, just everything is broken down from nature. The arts, the beadwork, our perspectives, as far as how we would go to the mountains, or we would go to the water and meditate or be there. That's all a part of our spirit as far as the nature and wildlife. And then I always talk about the living creations, and the living creations are basically the humans, the landscapes, and the nature, or the wildlife. And so I think so many times people think the living creations are just the humans, and that's not correct. And it kind of hurts my heart at times, because the living creations are those ants. It's the flowers that grow. It's the bison. They are living creations just like us. And it's so important that we all work together all the time, because we are the foundation. Everything else is after. I was thinking of this a couple days ago, is if we didn't have a ground, we wouldn't have a road for the cars to travel on. If we didn't have a sky, we wouldn't have anything for the plane or the spaceship to fly into. So the earth is the foundation of everything. And we should think about the earth first before everything else would be quote unquote materialistic. So we need to take care of each other, the living creations, and then everything else should follow, but that should be the foundation of everything. When you're talking about Indiana wildlife or Indiana nature, it's the same thing. You're looking at landscapes and you're looking at wildlife. But what does it take? People may think, well, how do you go about doing this? You just need yourself. If you want to go outside, your house, just sit outside, be away from everything. Go to a local park, go to a state park, a national park. That's all you need is yourself. If you want to add to it, you can get something like binoculars. And this is a really unique point, because when I first started out, it was me, kind of back that up a little bit. I'm 39, and hey, Flicka, I need my phone real quick, just make sure I know the time. But when I first started out, I didn't really get in tune to my nature side until I was about 33. And a story as an elder, he had a pair of binoculars, and they like to look at hawks and birds and things like that. And so I lived in a residential area that was underdeveloped at the time, which that's great because there was a lot of open land. And he wanted me to look at this bird through the binoculars. And I didn't have much of an interest. So he was persistent, said, hey, go ahead. I'm like, no, go ahead. No, finally I did. And I think this bird was a brown thrasher. And I'm not sure to this day, but I'm kind of sure. But it wasn't until I seen the bird close up. Like, you think you see something, and when you see it close up with binoculars or a telephoto lens, that opened a whole nother side to me. And so when you talk about binoculars, it's cool because you'll actually see the detail, you'll see the movement, it's just a whole different experience. And then if you want to get out there with a camera, whether it be your smartphone, a DSLR camera, a telephoto camera, it really doesn't matter. And this is a DSLR camera right here. It's more of a high-end camera and more of a professional camera. And so this is one of the cameras that I may carry. And then, everybody today, they have a smartphone pretty much. So those smartphones, don't let them fool you like they're not as good as a professional camera or a DSLR camera. They are great, and they're great with landscapes too. And then they have the clarity and the color in most of your smartphones is really great as well. So if you want to get outside into nature, here's a few things that you need to consider here. You just want to get outside. That's just period. Just get out there. And you want to explore. Just get out there and walk. It'll teach you what you need to teach. A lot of times if you just go into nature, 80% of the time, it will reward you. You'll see a hawk, you'll see a great blue heron, you'll see something that it's just not ordinary. And so it makes it really exciting. You want to get out there and learn. When you see certain birds or animals, you just want to learn, because some of the times, as it was for me, the different birds that I would see, I didn't know them. I might have known a cardinal, but then when you know an eastern bluebird, a cardinal, killdeer, red-winged blackbird, you'll look at things a lot different, and then that begins your learning process, and that's kind of your motivation or your gas, because after a while you've seen a lot of it or most of it. And just be free. When you go outside, you're free. Just go outside. It's a huge blessing that it's still here. And then I'm going to just go through a little bit of Indiana wildlife with you. When I talked about the eastern bluebird, I'm going to show you a picture of an eastern bluebird. And each one that I bring up, I'm just going to allow everyone to kind of watch it for about 30 seconds. And then you just look at it, use your creativity, and whatever comes to your mind. And then I'll switch to the next point. Now with this eastern bluebird, I wrote a couple points, and I may flip to this. I'll flip to the slide, but I may just talk about it while it's up on screen. But your eastern bluebird, and I was thinking about this last night, is when you're out there, especially if you're just a novice or you're out there and you're really not aware, you may never even see this eastern bluebird really. So the thing is like it won't stand out to you right away. And I thought this because the blue, it doesn't take over their entire body. Like as a cardinal, it's red, so their whole body is red. It's easier to spot them. So you have to, if you're wanting to see the eastern bluebird, you actually want to pay attention to all the birds you may see, because, or be still a lot longer, because a lot of times when I first started, when I would look at a lot of birds, I would think kind of they're all the same. But when you look down through binoculars or telephoto lens, you'll start to see, oh wow, that's this kind of bird, and that's that kind of bird, and that kind of bird. It'll open your perspective a little bit. So this guy right here, he's unique. He can be easier to spot, but he's not necessarily obvious to spot. So he takes patience, he or she takes patience, and then it just kind of goes to, not all birds are the same. So don't think just because you see a bird that, oh, it's not an eastern bluebird, or it's not an American kestrel, or, you know, other birds, like eastern meadowlark. So now the great blue heron, I'm going to show you a picture. All these were taken in Indiana. So these birds are waterfowl, they're out there. And I'll try it with the slide this time, but actually I'm going to go back just so it makes it something more pleasing that you guys can look at. And then basically this is just us visiting. When I talk about art or photography or life in general, it's just about us visiting. That's the art of it first and foremost. So the fact that I'm able to talk to you guys, it helps me be comfortable, and it helps it to me not be so textbook and where we're reading. But basically this would be considered waterfowl, and or, I mean, you could maybe call it a bird, but you'll find these along creeks, basically any bodies of water. It could be a creek, it could be a river, but they are out there. They're usually in solitude. So, and they're would be considered kind of like a predator. They eat live food. So that long beak that you see at the end, that's so they can pluck their fish or toads or what, just small things in the water, and then they can eat those. It doesn't happen a whole lot, but sometimes you'll see a pair. But that doesn't happen very often. You'll usually see them in solitude like you see them right here. And they're larger. When we see the eastern bluebird, obviously that's smaller. And then this great blue heron, it's pretty tall, especially when it sticks its neck up and, you know, its long legs and its bigger body. So they're really acrobatic too. Like when you see them fly, they're going to be like a size of a turkey vulture or an eagle or a hawk, somewhere in that category. They're significantly sized to where you'll notice them. And then the bald eagle or the eagle, whatever you want to call it, now I want to make a point here that every piece of photography or video or the PowerPoint, especially the video and the pictures, I created that. So these are not images that I've used off another person. They are all me. And forgive me, I just see something like has entered waiting weight room for this meeting, admit or not, so I don't know what to do. But anyway, so the eagle, so I took every image. So now the eagle, they're around large bodies of water as well. And so they can kind of obviously stick out a little more because of the size of them. And you'll see them perched on trees a lot or branches because they want to overlook the water. Now, they may not be looking for toads or, you know, minnows. They're usually looking for fish. I don't know, maybe a bluegill or a bass. So they eat much larger food, basically. And a lot of times if you see an eagle in a tree, don't just get fascinated right there, because if you look along that whole tree and other branches and maybe the neighboring tree, you may see a juvenile eagle. And they're kind of, unless they're a baby, they're kind of deceptive because They're pretty much as large as a bald eagle, but their head is not white. It's like the color of the body of the eagle that you see right here on the screen. So they're majestic, they're great. The bald eagle is definitely one of the most popular animals or birds of prey that you'll see in all of nature. I'm going to get to the red fox here. Now, I want to stress that all these images, they were taken in Indiana, but the unique thing about a fox, I would say the fox and the coyote are probably my two favorite, probably a wolf too, but fox, they're really unique. And in this picture, you can kind of see the tail. They have a really long tail, and like their feet and their hands, they're black, maybe up to the joint. And they're so unique. I had the privilege, this one right here, it was sunbathing on on a piece of concrete. And so I kind of interrupted this fox a little bit, but so that's why he's looking back at me. And I happened to notice that with the adults, they're more, they're aware of you. I had the privilege of seeing some adults and their children, and the adults, they're aware of you. And they won't necessarily just go away from you. They're kind of mature in the fact of how they see danger. If they see it's obvious, they're going to go. But if they don't, the children are a little different. The children will pretty much go away from you. And I just thought it was unique because I had a chance to watch this fox family, and I got to see so many of their inner workings and how they work, especially with human contact. And it was kind of neat because the adult was kind of, they were more mature and more just aware. And so when they would see me, obviously I don't encroach them. I don't go up to them fast. I take my time with them. I care about them. I have a different energy when I go up to them. But the adult would look at me, but the children would go like in the hole, that they have holes and they go in there. But it was just cool to see the adult. It was just more seasoned basically. And I'd love to emphasize more of a story sometime on fox, but fox are so unique in the fact, I'll just give you a few points here, is they have underground holes basically. And so like the cubs, they'll go inside this hole, and that's where they can go for protection or where they live for a while, before they go out and they go get their food. They're workers. I came up with a phrase, get your nose to the ground, because a lot of times you'll see one fox stuck out to me really prominent, and he was just sniffing the ground. I mean, he was working. He came off the top of a mountain. He was working the entire time. But basically, get your nose to the ground means get to work. And a lot of these wildlife that you'll see, they work. And so they're unique in that. And then the adult and this family that I had seen, I didn't see two adults. I just seen one, and I seen about 3 to 5 cubs. And the adult always showed nurturing attention to those cubs. Would nuzzle its nose on their face or in their teeth or on their fur to clean them off or tell them that, he or she loves them. They played with their children a lot. They went to go get food. I had seen an abundance of food just watching this fox family for like a week. And it was just so fascinating that, that they looked out for those cubs. And they have to be kind of cautious to let those cubs go out of their view, because it's a dangerous world out there. I mean, they could get in contact with a beaver, they could get in contact with a coyote, they could get lost, maybe they could fall in the water. And it's just so unique how they live. And so from an indigenous perspective, we probably learned so much from the animals just by watching them. And this is kind of a couple notes, is they're more rare. You're not just going to see a fox. You're going to have to really it'd be really tough to find a fox. I look for them and they don't just happen like that. And when I say they're underground, it's more of, it's going to be more of a rare see than seeing something like a crow or a duck or a geese, a Canadian goose. Here's a squirrel. Hey, Flicka, can you play that squirrel? Squirrels are more common, but here's a video of a squirrel.
Okay, hang on here. We're going to do a quick switch.
And see, this keeps coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I need to do anything.
There we go. One more time.
Okay. In that video, it kind of cracks me up because it's the squirrel's eating, and then toward the end, its bark had fell off or fell down, and then it paid attention to me real quick, like, what are you doing? You just messed up everything I was doing. So the squirrel is really unique. They're workers too. They're constantly finding acorns and carrying them or eating them, putting them in the ground. It's just, I noticed with a lot of nature and wildlife, they are workers. They work constantly. And then we need to be thankful for the animals that, I wouldn't say it's definitely not rare to see a squirrel, but they're not as easy as a crow or a duck or a geese, that they're not as prominent as that. They're kind of in the middle, but I've had the privilege of going to a couple different parks and I would just see an abundance of them. This is kind of when I first started. That kind of worked my way up. I would see the squirrel, be fascinated with them and spend time with them and learn them. And then, gradually you just keep going to other things. But when I first started, I spent a lot of time with squirrels. Oh man, sorry to go past there, but now your cardinal, we'll just take a look at the cardinal. Now, the thing about the cardinal, it's our state bird. They are very popular. People love them around a lot of bird feeders. They're very difficult to photograph. Out of anything I've ever photographed, I would say the cardinal was the hardest for me. I don't know what it is. I do believe in, the spirit and the native medicine and all that sort of things as far as spirituality. And this one, it's a good picture. But I've got a chance to photograph it a couple times where it's really pristine, but this has always been one that's kind of eluded me to where I haven't really got the greatest of shots with them. But I would say they're probably the prettiest songsters of all the birds. And when I say a songster, it's basically these birds, they have their calls. And when you know the cardinal's call, they talk a lot or they chirp or sing a lot. And once you know that call, another thing about birds is when you know their call, you can start looking in the area, and this one will be easier to spot, because if you hear the call and you know it's a cardinal, then you just look for a red bird that's close to where you hear that chirping or the singing, basically. And I believe in the Cherokee culture, it's considered like a loved one has come back to you or is close to you, or it's a significant other coming to visit you. So, there's many myths, tales, truths to all that sort of thing. So, but the red bird, called a red bird, or in Cherokee we call it tojuwa, and that would mean a red bird or a cardinal, or igage. how do you say bird? G-squaw. Igage G-squaw. I can't believe I forgot bird. Bird is very easy. It's like a foundational word in the Cherokee language. So yeah. And I think a lot of times, if you even look at hair, a lot of times I think we got so much from nature and wildlife. When you talk about color, where do we get color from? Where we get the color red, different tints of color, where do we get that from? I believe it's from the wildlife. And then also like the hair. Hair, they got like a mohawk, which is kind of cool. And sometimes with these birds, when they're alert, their mohawk will go up. And when they're not alert, then, or things are more at peace and they're not concentrating, their hair will go down. And that's true with the belted kingfisher, but I think that's really unique. And it's kind of like he has a mask on, he or she, the black mask, which is cool. Oh, the cardinals, if you see a cardinal, it's probably very likely that one or the other is there. If you see a female cardinal, she does not look like that was a male. The red one was a male. The female's colorful, kind of an orangish reddish, not as colorful as the male, but they're usually together. So if you see the female, you know that the male's around, or if you see the male, you know the female's probably around. Turtles. I believe these are eastern painted turtles in Indiana. And basically the thing about turtles, I'm going to try to get, I got about 8 or 9 more minutes and I want to get through this. I got another very important part coming up to me. But turtles, they're very aware. Nature is always aware. They are very aware. And so the turtle basically, I mean, they're aware of you. You get too close, they'll jump right off that branch or that limb and they'll go right into the water. They're protectors. They're just living, probably getting some sun, relaxing, working, plotting their next move, and just always emphasize to pay attention to the nature and take care of the nature. Oh, and then they're usually around in the hot months like spring, summer, fall, you know, the last of spring, first of fall type of thing. And then when we wrap this up, I'm going to talk a little bit about my grandpa. And he's a full-blooded Cherokee. He was Cherokee Nation. And just really unique. But I thought I was going to go back to another point. But well, anyway, when we wrap this up, to me, it's life. The first of all this is life. Then to me, it's like broken down into all, and then it's indigenous. So, and then when you look at Native culture, indigenous culture, I'm trying to think what point I'm going to drive home here is. When you look at indigenous culture, basically, I was watching a documentary and they were speaking about different tribes, you know, Navajo, Apache, Nez Perce, Cherokee, Cheyenne, Mohawk. And I was just very curious of what this documentary was going to say about the Cherokee, because me being youthful, I was a police officer. I've switched to another stage in my life, you know, more with the spirituality and the calmness and the nature and wildlife and photography and art and that sort of thing. But so back in the day, I was always about the warrior. And I always respected so much the Apache and Geronimo and the Chiricahuas and the Mescaleros, how they were the last to surrender to the U.S. government. So I'm like, I wonder what they're going to say about the Cherokee when they go to the Cherokee. And what they had said about the Cherokee was, at the time, it was cool. It wasn't the greatest, but now I look at it and I appreciate it so much more. But they said they adapted well. Like the reservation, obviously we didn't want to go to the reservation, but we adapted well once we were there. And kind of when I think about myself or I think about my grandpa, I look at adaptation, that it's life, and it's indigenous too. But in the end, it's being able to adapt. So basically, now my grandpa, you know, he was really unique, and I'm going to wrap this up. But basically, he was so unique. He was born in the Cherokee Nation, Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And he spent a lot of time there, and we have so much family there. And then he had moved from there. And I remember I spent some time with my grandpa. There's a lot of family dynamic there. And probably for the first 16 years was around him a lot. And then I didn't reacquaint with him until probably, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. But anyways, as a kid, you don't think much of it. Like, I was around him, he would speak fluent Cherokee. He was really dark, charismatic. He was everything that you could ever imagine of. And but as a kid, you just, oh, that's your grandpa. But as an adult, I looked at it different, especially when I was connected to my spirituality a lot more. But anyways, when I was with him, he was the ways that I think about nature, how important it is, or just the speech and the spirituality of it. I hadn't been around him maybe in 16 years. And then when I got around him, and when he started speaking about nature, because he knew that I liked nature, and when he started speaking about it, I had never felt so connected, as far as, whoa, somebody thinks that exact same way. And I remember that he was talking to me, and he was talking about a book that he was going to write. And he was going to talk about like the turtles or the trees or any of nature. And then he was going to talk about how we need to learn from it. And I remember he was specifically talking about a tree and how it's really strong and it's rooted in the ground. And that really stuck out to me. And so he was going to do that with a lot of different nature. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, I was like, he's going to think I stole his idea, because I wanted to do this exact same thing. And so it was just really unique to connect with him in that way. And, he lived, another cool story is, he said that when he left the Cherokee Nation to go over to Cherokee, see, he was really unique because he adapted. Not every time someone's going to leave the reservation of the state, that can go with anybody. But he was really unique in that he was a full-blooded Cherokee, but he enjoyed other worlds and navigation and learning. And that's what's really unique about him. But he said that, because a lot of times your homeland, they may just be teasing with you or just say this or that. So there may not be really anything to it. But one time he said they called him a potato, because they said that he was red or brown on the outside, but he was white on the inside, because he was an entrepreneur and he wanted to come to Indiana for the automotive industry. And because there's better jobs here at that time. And so he had came here, and he had made a way. So he was unique in that he knew the Cherokee Nation. He knew over in Cherokee, North Carolina, he lived there. And then he also knew about living off the reservations as well. And so he was unique in that area. And he took me to some waterfalls that were around North Carolina, and we got to see them. And like I said, I'm going to wrap this up, but he took me around some waterfalls. He had a cabin, so he would be real peaceful in nature, and he would sit on the back porch, and he'd watch the turtles and the geese and, the great blue herons probably. And so that was unique. I'm just thinking of nature things to speak about. And then he also taught in schools. So he would teach the Cherokee language, or he would teach wildlife and nature, which I thought was really unique, because I had not really heard of that. So in closing, basically, he was someone who loved nature and wildlife. And when I go to work, I take people with me. And two people that I really take with me is I take the nature with me. I take the foxes, I take the cardinals, I take the birds, and we go to work. If I'm going to an art show, I take them with me. If I'm going to a presentation, I take them with me. And one of the people that I do take with me is my grandpa, Larkin Fourkiller. We share the same name, because I know that speaking with him, I know that he looked at nature the way that I did. And so I'm just going to leave you with a picture of him. Like I say, he was a full-blooded, fluent Cherokee speaker, and he lived he was a part of the boarding schools as well. And thank you, everybody, for all your time. I just want to dedicate this to him in some way, because he passed on recently. And we always remember, and especially, he's very important to me and to us.
Okay, great. Let me see. I'm going to ask Laura if we have any questions.
Hi, yes, we don't have any questions yet from the chat. Thank you so much, Larkin, for your talk and ending on that powerful note. If anybody has a comment or a question now, please feel free to either enter that into the chat box and I can assist with moderating, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question. And we'll, of course, moderate if multiple people want to ask at once. So please feel free to go ahead and ask your questions at this moment.
And I just want to encourage everybody, if there is no questions, great. And if there is, ask. This is what it's about.
I have a couple comments I want to make here. I want to also add that we are very pleased to host this presentation in conjunction with the Center for the Environment. So thank you to Dr. Zanotti for joining us and for the support. We are going to host another session with Larkin coming up on Wednesday, July 22nd at the same time from 2 to 3. And again, it's going to focus on photography. So that'll take place next month. And I really enjoyed the presentation, given that a lot of what we talked about was the connection to the land, to the animals. And I think that resonates with many tribal nations across the country. As Larkin was talking about the foxes and the coyotes, I'm from the Navajo Nation, born and raised in New Mexico. We also have similar stories about the coyote and how they are messenger, how they're always bringing up different stories. And so that's one thing I thought that might be interesting. I do have one question that was posed here by Hannah. She says, what's your favorite state park in Indiana, Larkin?
Hey, it said Hannah? Yeah, okay, I see. Hannah, thanks for asking this question. It's a great question. Favorite state park? I don't think the Great Smoky Mountains, that's more of a national park. Indiana State Park is nice. But probably furthermore, to answer your question, I just enjoy every park, local, state, national. So I hope you're getting out to the parks.
Hi, Larkin. There's another question from Liz Jackson. She was asking, how long do you wait before getting a great shot? And is it often a long time?
Yes. And I'll try to answer this shortly. But you need to Liz and to everyone, you need to be thankful of, I would say, 3 different species, and that's the crows, it's the ducks, and the Canadian geese. Because if you go to a pond, you'll usually see the geese or the ducks, and you can practice your photography or look at your photography or learn. And then the crows, if you see a crow, they're kind of a larger bird. They're black, and they usually travel in packs, like 3 to 5 of them. We're in close vicinity of each other. So on that note, it wouldn't take an overly long time to capture a picture. But if it's anything outside of there, like a bird or a cardinal or eastern bluebird, good luck. I have a strong telephoto lens that zooms a lot. I'm a high professional, and it's really tough unless you're really professionally skilled. But you start from somewhere, as always, and then you work your way up. But it means a lot to you ask a question, and same with the other Hannah as well.
So we have another question from Caleb. Do you have any particular animal that you have connected with recently that has been meaningful recently?
Hey, Caleb, like I said, it means a lot that you even ask a question, or anybody. Yes, I've been studying a fox family recently in Indiana, and I've spent I spent 5 real close days with them, and I go check on them, and I've probably seen them 12 different times, but I think I've got all the photography and the video out of them, so to speak. But yeah, it connected with me, and I'll share a brief story. Is that basically I spotted this fox family through one cub one day, and sometimes I'll get something to eat, and I'll just go park somewhere, and usually it's a nice, nature setting, it's quiet, and I happen to look to my right, and lo and behold, I go, that looks like a fox, and it happened to be a little cub, which was really cool. And I had my camera, so I wanted to take a couple pictures, but obviously he or she was along a tree line, and I got about 3 quick shots, not great shots, and then it went to the trees and out of sight. So, but I recently connected with that family really hardcore, and when I got close, because even though he went in the tree, or he or she went in the tree line, I went to where I last seen them, and then that's how I noticed their holes, because there was a hole there, and that cub was gonna go in there. And it was so cool because when I went up there to that hole, that little cub was right there. And the way that the cub looked up at me, the eyes, and a lot of coyotes, fox, their eyes are like, I don't even know if this is applicable, but iridescent. It's like their eyes they're like glossy. And just the spirit of how that coyote looked up at me, it was a baby, it was concerned, it was pretty, and it needed to know, do I need to go in this hole or can I stay out here? It was just a magical moment to me. And so absolutely, I connected with them and watched that family.
So just a quick response from Caleb of thanking you so much for all of your stories and that it's awesome that you found their den. That's very special. There's no other questions, but I might take the opportunity to ask you a question myself. So I'm wondering if you have any different times of the day that you go and photograph, or you prefer to photograph, or if it's just open to any time that you're available.
Well, to me, open to any time, and to me, I'm not really the night person. Not the moon. You'll catch the moon at night, but good luck finding anything else. So really, to me, from the time the sun comes up till it's going down, those are the best times. And I always love to be outside because there's always something magical that's going to happen. 80% of the time.
Great, thank you so much. And we've had a question about whether this is being recorded. And so the answer is yes, that this is being recorded, and we're hoping to share the link once it's up on the DDI website when it's done. So thank you for asking that question. Are there any other questions that people might have? We have a couple minutes left, so can take one or two more if there's any final thoughts.
And I see some people here, Katie, Roxy, Hannah, Amanda, Siddharth, Robbie, Allison, Caleb, Asante, Liz, Deb, Lindsay, Laura. I truly thank you for taking the time, and it was an enjoyable experience.
Offer some closing remarks. I'm going to sneak in here. And yes, thank you again all for joining us. And this is our first presentation we're hosting at the center. We are practicing social distancing, safe social distancing, and being mindful of all the different restrictions that we have here on campus. So I appreciate everybody coming to join us. If you have any questions, feel free to send a message to myself, Deb, or to Laura. And we do have some other events coming up, as I had mentioned in my opening. Next week, we're featuring a presentation with the Career for Center Opportunities. And in the end of the month, end of June, we're hosting our book discussion with Therese Mayat, focused on the Trail of Lightning. In July, we'll have another set of events that'll be coming up. We'll have another one featuring Larkin will be coming in on July 22nd for another presentation. So thanks again, and we look forward to having you join us. Have a good day. See ya. Our presentation for this afternoon. First of all, thank you all for joining us on this beautiful afternoon. I'm looking outside and jealous if you're able to get out there and enjoy some of the nice weather. My name is Falika Ahastin Bryant. I'm the director of the Native American Educational Culture Center here on campus, and we're actually presenting from the center today. And we're very pleased to have our guest, Larkin Fourkiller, who will be joining us here shortly.